Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara Peck. I am ISPE's Manager of Community and Industry Recognition. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today with Fran and Tom. We started just a few minutes early, but this allows us to get everyone to get settled, to make sure that you have a good sound connection. We won't get started for the presentation until the top of the hour, though. So while we're waiting, I did want to cover a few tips just in case you sometimes experience some sound issues. We do recommend, if you're hearing any crackling or any breaking up in your audio, that you switch from using your computer audio to using the phone dial-in. You can find that local number in your area, if it's available, on the control panel on the right side of your screen. If you're not having any sound issues, feel free to continue using the computer audio. That's not a problem. However, be aware that, at any time during the session, if it starts to break up for you, you can switch from computer to phone. You just want to make sure to use the number that's in the control panel. Now, to find that local number, you just click to the control panel, but make sure to change computer audio to phone call. Otherwise, you'll hear that really bad feedback sound that everyone's familiar with. Now, if you are using the phone, please make sure to enter your audio PIN when prompted. This connects your phone call to your web presence. We want to make sure that we have enough availability for everyone who wants to participate. So it's important to use that audio PIN. Now, if you're also having some bandwidth issues, you might want to consider using a wired internet connection instead of Wi-Fi. Sometimes that helps a little bit with the lag. Now, if all else fails, we do have a couple minutes before we get started. You can always disconnect and then reconnect. Sometimes that helps, the universal cure for computer problems. So just disconnect and reconnect. Now, if you have experienced any sound issues and you miss a couple of minutes of something, or you're not hearing something very well and you want to listen to it again, we will be recording this and sending it out within the next 24 hours or so. So feel free, kind of look out for that recording. Also, you can share with some of your colleagues if you would like to listen to that again. Now, before we get started, we do want to open a poll just to find out where you're joining us from today. We're interested in seeing, where our members are dialing in. So if you can just select here, either you're in North America, Europe, the APAC region, South America, or the Africa, the Middle East. So we'll just leave this open until we get started at the top of the hour. I am joining you today from St. Petersburg, Florida, working from home, like a lot of us are still doing these days. It's still summer here in Florida, really hot, really humid, very rainy. So hopefully it's a little cooler wherever you're dialing in from. Okay, so just gonna leave that open for a minute or so, and then we'll get started right at the top. For anyone who's just joined us, we haven't gotten started quite yet. We're just opened it a little early to see if you have, to help you with any connection problems that you might be having. If you are finding that your computer audio is breaking up a bit, you should look for the phone call in your local area that's on the control panel. You can switch from computer to phone audio anytime during the session. Also, you might consider using a wired internet connection instead of Wi-Fi. That usually helps. Or, like I always say, turn it off, turn it back on. That usually fixes the problem. And then while we're waiting, we have another minute. Tell us where you're joining us from today. We're interested. We hope we have a large international membership, so we hope to have a good spread of members from all regions of the world. We'll just get started here in about a minute with our presenters today. So thank you for joining us. We hope you learn something from our presenters today. One thing we'll be doing is, if you have any questions for the presenters at any time during the session, put your question in the question panel of the control panel. If we don't get to your question, we are going to be sending these to Fran and Tom, and our staff will be looking at the questions that you have, and we'll be doing some follow-up communication to make sure that we answer your question. So keep your eye out for some more information, but definitely send us your question. Just type it into the question panel. Well, it looks like it's 11 o'clock, so let's see our results. Where's everyone joining us from today? Looks like we have a big group joining us from North America and Europe and Asia, South America, Africa, Middle East. They're busy today, so they weren't able to join us. So hopefully they'll get to listen to the recording later on. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so As I mentioned before, welcome to today's session. It's the ISPE Member Connect. It's our first installment of this series. We're going to hear from Fran Zipp and Tom Hartman. They're going to share a little bit with us about where ISPE is and some things that are going to be happening here in the future. My name is Barbara Peck. I'm Manager of Community and Industry Recognition at ISPE. Want to remind you, if you didn't hear me say this a few minutes ago, to submit your questions for us. We're going to be reviewing those, even if we don't get to them live. But we want to know what your questions are, and we'll be addressing those and sending out some additional communication after the webinar ends. So we are recording it. If you miss a part of it, you come in a little bit late, we'll make sure that you have that recording and you can review it. Usually send it out in the first or about 24 hours or so. So with that, I would like to hand this over to our first speaker, Ms. Fran Zipp. She's the ISPE chair. She's going to share some insights on her year as chair. It's been quite a year. So Fran, over to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So it really has been an unprecedented year for all of us. I think that if you were on this call a few minutes ago, you filled out the poll. So I'll tell you where I'm from. I'm from North America. That's where I am today. That's where I've been since March 9th of this year. And I typically would call into webinars or calls, and I'd say I'm at an airport. Well, I haven't been on an airport since March 9th, and the changes have been amazing for our industry and for each one of us. I think there have been unprecedented challenges in our industry and as we work together as a team. However, these challenges have really brought many opportunities. I'm sure you've seen this within your own regulatory bodies. There's been unprecedented collaboration between regulators. All of us who work in a regulated environment, which most of us within ISPE do, know that for years we've been talking about mutual recognition and regulators coming together. Well, this has been the year of regulators coming together. They've had no choice. You can't fly all over the world at a whim, and you have to rely on other regulatory bodies that are just as good as your own regulatory body in the majority of the cases to help you so that we can bring drugs to market and keep drugs on market and build facilities. There's been unprecedented collaboration between manufacturers. I don't know the companies that are represented on this call, but I can tell you that I have never seen so, in my 40 years in the business, so many senior leaders of pharmaceutical industries coming together and talking about what they can do to help each other. And it's not just about the press releases where you hear big company X is working with big company Y to produce a vaccine or come up with a vaccine. It's companies saying, look, we have extra resources because we're focusing on coming up with a vaccine or a new therapeutic entity, and we want to help. Can we work together? Of course, in all these conversations, especially when they're US-based, there's many attorneys present, antitrust, but they're working together. And this is an opportunity. So instead of the glass half empty, the glass is half full in many cases. There's been many new diagnostic tools. Companies that were making batteries are now making ventilators. And that's an opportunity for ISPE. Many of these battery making companies don't have any clue of what GMPs are or how to qualify a facility or how to commission a facility. So great opportunities for us as an ISPE group and us as an industry. From an ISPE perspective, we basically regrouped. We learned that reaching out to each other and to our community was the most important. We learned to take care of each other by connecting not in person, but via mails. I know some of you, if you're the chair of your specific chapter or affiliate, you may get the email that I send after every board meeting, which lists the items that the board has covered. Now, when I started in my role as chair, I said, I want to get out to chapters and affiliates. And I started that role at the beginning of November of 19. And before I had to stop traveling, I had managed to meet with 12 chapter or affiliates throughout the world. And I really my plan was to get up to 30. 27 is the top. I figured I'd add three more in there and say, well, maybe there's opportunities for growth with new chapters and affiliates. And obviously that came to a stop. But we as an ISP community came together. We shared webinars, we shared learnings, we shared documents. And I think if you had asked me, and I don't know the demographics of the people on the phone, but it was very difficult for me last year to figure out the difference between Team and Zooms and GoTo and how to do remote learning. I think we all have it as second nature now. More importantly, and most importantly to me personally, is we learned how to be part of a community. An ISP is a community. We learned that our community is within our own country, within our own city, but it also is an international community. And we had to learn, each of us in our own businesses, how to adjust our manufacturing processes in order to accelerate the availability of key products. And these key products aren't just the new therapeutic entities or the vaccines that we hear are in certain countries and coming to others by November 1st. Again, I told you I'm sitting here in North America, in the US. But this is other products that the companies that are focusing on the vaccines have really stopped making. So some of the basic generics or basic branded products or branded generics that the world needs, we've come together. We've contributed through our foundation as well as individual chapters and affiliates to our local communities to help. And for me, when I hear about that through the ISP chapters and affiliates, I feel very proud to wear my ISPE hat. So it has been an uncertain time for all of us, for sure. I believe when you think about it, we all talk about what we can do with ISP and with the community, but it's so personal. And any of you who've heard me speak know I always try to throw this in here because it's been my motto for so many years. Everything about work is personal. And if work is not personal to you, in my opinion, you're in the wrong field, especially if you're in the biopharmaceutical industry. It has to be personal. And this year has brought this out more than ever. We've reached out to each other. We've showed that chapters and affiliates can survive, can thrive, can grow by growing within their community and sharing. I'm amazed when I see, especially in Europe, that I've been made aware of, where different affiliates work together to put on webinars and distribute items to their communities. We've continued to offer our baseline guides. Our communities of practice are stronger than ever, and networking continues. So I really think if you go back and look at ISPE's mission and vision, it recharges me personally, and it energizes our members. It is not the year of chair that I imagined it to be, but to me, it has been a great year as chair because it's been a year of change, and change brings opportunity. And we are remaking our society, and we can only do that with your help. So please continue to give your input. I can tell you that your board of directors, and I'm assuming some of them are on the phone, are fully committed to supporting the chapters and affiliates, and we want to hear from you. So thank you, and I appreciate the time that I've had to speak. And now I'm going to say a few words about Tom, who I have the opportunity to introduce. So firstly, Tom is somebody I respect greatly. I worked with Tom. We actually joined the board of directors, or were elected to the board of directors at the same time. And anybody who knows me knows that when I first meet new people, so I'm on the board, these are all new people, I write down little notes to describe them as to how I'm going to remember them. In past years, when I was younger, it got me in trouble because I would make a comment that maybe I shouldn't make. But now I'm older, so I know what to do. But for Tom, I put, be careful, he's really smart. And that's how I remembered Tom. And that is something I've learned to respect. And I did that on the first day that I met him at the ISPE board. So Tom was our vice chair, and we worked closely together. And then Tom decided to throw his name in the hat as a candidate for the president and CEO of ISPE. And as you know, we had an interim president, Tim, who did a tremendous job working with our team, and we appreciate everything Tim did. And we had a very robust, led by Joanne of our board, interview process, and we selected Tom to be the president and CEO. And I have been personally honored to work with Tom. And, Tom and I schedule weekly one-on-ones, and we wind up we're canceling our one for today because we talk every day, or almost every day. There's so many issues and so items that and opportunities to work together. So I look forward to Tom's continuing leadership at ISPE, and now I will turn this over to Tom. Thank you.
Well, Fran, thank you for your very kind words. Really appreciate that. It's been a pleasure to serve this board and under your leadership as chair. Good morning and good afternoon or good evening, depending upon where you all are in the world. And let me also thank all of those in attendance for making the decision to be here with us over the next hour or so. So who am I? That was what I was asked to talk about here. Firstly, I go by Tom. I knew that when my mother called me Thomas that I was in big trouble. So I go by Tom. I was born and raised in Western Pennsylvania. Yeah, that makes me a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and I'm a season ticket holder. I'm married with 3 children, and interestingly, all of us have found opportunities in the pharmaceutical or medical industry. My wife works with a local cell and gene therapy company. My oldest daughter lives locally and works for J&J and the quality organization. My middle daughter is in her 2nd year of residency in Jacksonville. And my youngest daughter is now working with GSK in the cell and gene therapy space. So all part of Big Pharma. We've lived in Philadelphia area most of our lives. We spent 5 years on assignment in Europe, 2 years in Texas, and finally back in the Northeast in the year 2000. But really enough about me personally. When I moved from the chemical industry to the pharmaceutical biotech industry with GSK, it was ISPE's gold standard knowledge documents, truly, that helped me with that transition. And then networking at various conferences and other events locally and internationally. ISPE enabled my career progression in the pharmaceutical industry to the position of Vice President of GMP operations, where I retired from GSK after nearly 20 years of service. As Fran mentioned, I joined the board in 2013, and I resigned my position on the board to advance my interest for consideration for the current role as your president and CEO on June 1st. I'm honored to serve in this capacity and feel like there really isn't a more noble role in the pharmaceutical industry if you're an engineer. So I'm really blessed to have this role. I feel very fortunate, and I look forward to the challenges in the role and supporting the industry and the patients that they serve, and in particular, the families of those patients that we serve, oftentimes overlooked when we just focus on the patient. Next slide, please. So I'm often asked about my vision for the future of ISPE and what will be my areas of focus. Well, there are many, but to name a few, I see member value at the top of the list. ISPE needs to continue to ensure our technical content is very relevant and consistent with the industry focus, and that it provides professional growth opportunities for its members. I want to expand, not reduce, our communities of practice and knowledge networks. These groups they truly underpin our reputation of deep technical expertise and critical industry topics. And the work that they do transcends all of our programs, including conferences, webinars, guidance documents, white papers, learning opportunities, just to name a few. Further, our regulatory focus through the regulatory steering team and their subcommittees and our communities of practice are truly living the ISPE vision of providing solutions to complex industry challenges through manufacturing innovation, member and workforce development, technical, regulatory, and compliance collaboration. As Fran stated earlier, just looking at that vision statement inspires me on a daily basis. And if you're a member of ISPE, please look at that vision statement and ask yourself, how can you not continue to be part of an organization that strives for that as a vision? Our chapters and affiliates are the backbone of the society. and we need to take a hard look at our affiliates and chapter model and evolve and modernize the model to benefit the society at large and expand the geography of our footprint and associated industry impact across the globe. We're an international organization. The recent addition of the Eurasian and Mexico affiliates are signs that we're moving in the right direction on this point. Further focus is on the ISPE Foundation that's driving a number of programs, including student travel grants. And a recent grant was given to the Brazilian affiliate for the work they have done on COVID in supporting the local population in Sao Paulo. And there was also a $10,000 grant in support of the World Health Organization efforts on COVID. Can you get the next slide, please? So in terms of pandemic, and Fran touched on some of this previously, and the challenges and the opportunities truly that COVID presented, I want to be crystal clear here. The ISPE staff met the challenge head on by converting all of our interactive platforms from face-to-face to virtual. And we're in the process of rolling out our partner showcase to improve the conference experience for our memberships relative to exhibits. We're seeing good interest in our new programs. We have a very meaningful slate of webinars, both live and on-demand training is being rolled out. We have a new mobile app emerging in the coming months. All that said, we have stayed in close contact with our communities of practice, and it all happened with a committed staff working remotely. We have evolved our model, we're responding, and we're taking advantage of the opportunities that this pandemic presents. The next slide shows our current board of directors. The board composition is critical to the strategic evolution of our content priorities for the society. And therefore, it's critical that all of the members cast their vote prior to the deadline of September 18th. Please take a moment, cast your ballot. All members of record were provided with an email and a link to enable them to cast their votes. This year, there are 5 open board slots and a ballot of very, very senior industry leaders presented on the ballot to fill these open slots on the board. So please cast your vote by September 18th. Thank you again very much for your attendance at today's session. I have an open door. You have a question, reach out to me. Now I want to introduce Jessica Hardy, our Senior Director of Membership. Jessie will share with you some of the tips to get the most out of your ISPE memberships. Over to you, Jess.
Great, thanks, Tom. First of all, I wanted to personally thank you all for being an ISPE member and your commitment to the society. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes today to touch on a few member benefits that you may or may not be aware of to make sure that you are getting the most out of your ISPE membership. We have many opportunities for you to stay connected in this virtual world, including our community connections, our award-winning PE magazine, and our ISPE webinar series that I will touch more on in a minute. We continue to expand our breadth of personal and professional development opportunities. So I want to encourage you to make sure that you are opted in to receive the latest communications from ISPE. So today I want to highlight one of our most popular member benefits that was just launched last year. ISPE's Complementary Pharma Best Practices webinar series provides members with exclusive access to a library of topical complementary webinars featuring leading subject matter experts. If you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to dive in and take advantage of this member benefit. It's a great way to keep up with the latest trends and topics while staying safe at home. And as Tom mentioned, I'm excited to give you an exclusive sneak peek at another benefit that we will be launching very soon. Our ISPE Partner Showcase will allow you to learn, connect, partner, and succeed with the latest technologies and solutions. This will be open to all members through the end of this year and features many partners that you have engaged with, at our ISPE conferences and events. It will give you the opportunity to network from anywhere, participate in live demos, and schedule one-on-one chats. So stay tuned as we introduce this in the upcoming weeks. And lastly, I am delighted to introduce you to a special September ISPE membership promotion. Anyone who renews during the month of September will receive an ISPE face mask shipped directly to your door. So this is a limited time offer, so I encourage you to take advantage of this today. We have limited quantities and already have seen great interest. So we hope that this small token shows our appreciation to you as an ISPE member. And now I'd like to hand it back over to Barbara Peck, our Manager of Community and Industry Recognition. She will be our ISPE Staff Spotlight. She will share how her position impacts and benefits the ISPE membership. Barbara?
Hi, thank you, Jesse. I'm happy to join you today to talk a little bit about my role with ISPE and how I work with our volunteers to bring more value to our members. Now, I've been with ISPE since 2014 and really have enjoyed working with members and volunteers and learning about this industry. I came in knowing nothing about pharma, and I like to think I know a little tiny bit now, but it's been really great to work with our volunteers to help them bring more content to ISPE. Now, in my role, I do work in a few different areas. I work with our communities of practice to help them moderate the forums. I'm always on the lookout for what members are talking about, what are the hot topics, and what are those current problems. I also help groups and to start new SIGs or communities if there's a demand for a new area of focus. Probably the largest part of my role is working with the volunteers of the steering committees associated with COPs. I help them to develop content for our webinars and act as a host, as you probably recognized from earlier today and from other webinars that you might have attended. And finally, the last area, a big area of focus, is the Facility of the Year Awards program. Next slide. Now, as Jesse mentioned, a great benefit included as part of your membership is your participation in communities of practice. They're a great way to virtually meet other members, other peers around the world who are just as passionate about that niche topic as you are. And they're hopefully going on the forums, they're posting questions that might help you in your daily life, or it gives you the opportunity to also post a question and hopefully someone else might have had the same challenge or issue that you might be experiencing. You never know that weird sound that your machine is making, not sure how to fix it, not sure where it's coming from. Someone else has probably had that same issue, and they might be able to give you a solution to find what the problem is, or direct you to maybe a guidance document or something else that might help you to resolve your issue. Next slide. And so probably the largest part of what I do as an ISPE staff member is I work with the SMEs who are on committees that work in those COP topical focus areas. They're using their collective experience to work on producing education sessions at conferences. They write guidance documents, they write blog posts, PE articles, they collaborate on regulatory issues, they produce webinars and podcasts on occasion. Now, I like to think of myself as the chief cat herder. So I help keep those committees on task. I set up meetings for them. I help them with their agendas to make sure that we're covering all of the business that we need to cover during our meetings. I also make sure to share information from other committees that they might not have worked with in the past, to help them collaborate a bit more on projects and ideas. Now, we have a lot of volunteer groups within ISPE. I am not the one who works with all of those groups. I think we have 100+ committees, but I do work with a large group of them. We're always on the lookout for new volunteers who are able to contribute. Okay, next slide. And so this is, probably a newer area, but I've been pretty passionate about working with them, is our webinars. So like I mentioned, you might recognize my voice from all of the webinars that we've done in the last year or so. My role with these webinars is to help the presenters to develop their session from the idea stage all the way through the production of the live event. Now, we started the webinars last year as a way for COPs to get as additional venue for them to share knowledge, because there isn't always a spot for them at a conference, but they have really good information to share. That's how I got involved with webinars, is working with the COPs. Now, since we've initially launched this, we have expanded this to offer even more sessions in 2020, and we're already starting to plan out for 21. Now, it's through my work with those COPs that I'm able to kind of stay on top of what hot topics members are talking about, and to make sure that we're focusing our webinars on information that members are looking for. And one way we do that is that we do evaluate those surveys that you fill out at the end of your webinar. So it's really important that you click on that button and you fill out and give us your input on what you would like to hear about in the future, what you thought of the webinar that we just did, because I do review all of your comments and suggestions, and will, depending on how often a topic is asked, we'll reach back to some of those other groups and say, hey, is there anybody here who might want to do a webinar on process validation, for example, which was one of our biggest webinars that we've had today. So it's really important to fill out that post-webinar survey. So just put my little plug in for that. Now, finally, the last area that I work with is our Voya program. Of all of the groups that I've worked with, I think I've probably learned the most from working with Voya, not because the others aren't important, but because with this, I get to see the way that a facility gets built. So I don't work in a facility, so I don't always know what the ins and outs are, but actually by reviewing those submissions, I've learned so much about the industry. Now, my role with Voya is I kind of do everything from soup to nuts. I work with the applicants as they're preparing their submissions, all the way through the committee review of the winners. I organize the education sessions, put on the banquet, and then just everything in between. So it's a really valuable program, and I hope that everyone is planning to attend our annual meeting this year. We have our Voya Day designated for November 3rd. And I've also had a question of whether or not we're going to accept applications next year. And we are. So, even though we've gone virtual, we definitely are making sure that we are having applications submitted. I think we're going to see some really cool innovations that we might not have seen occur as quickly because of COVID. So I try to look on the bright side of this year in 2020, but I definitely think that there's opportunities. So if you think your facility would meet the requirements, then you should definitely apply for Voya. So I think that's all the time I actually have today to share about my role. So with this, I'm going to put my host hat back on and get to our question and answer session. So Fran, Tom, and Jesse, I hope you're ready.
Fire away, Barbara.
Okay, so the first question, one thing I do want to say is if you haven't submitted a question in the control panel, definitely send your question to us, because if we don't get to it today, we're going to be reviewing those, and we'll make sure that we do some follow-up communication. So definitely send us your questions. So our first one, Jesse, this is for you. Does my membership in ISPE automatically renew, or do you have to register every year?
Thanks, Barbara. That is a great question. And so we actually just launched auto renewal earlier this year, and we have seen some great interest in it, and a lot of our members are adopting that. This way you can just set it and forget it. You don't have to worry if that you need to go in and pay your membership. It just will automatically charge your credit card. So, but in order to opt in for auto renewal, you just need, when you renew through the website, you select, there's a box that you check for auto renewal. So any other questions, or if you aren't able, you're not sure where that is, definitely reach out to the member services team and we can help with that.
Thanks, Jesse. So our next question is for Fran. How much time do you feel that it takes to be an effective board chair for ISPE? So I know you came on in November. This has been a weird year, but in a normal year, what would you say your answer for that would be?
Well, to be very honest, it's almost like your second full-time job, but it's a really positive experience. So you have time. We're very organized as a board, I believe, and working with Tom and the ISPE staff to try to be respectful of people's time. So we have calls and meetings at hours that are most convenient to most people. We also have weekend times if we can't, we all have full-time jobs, and so we have calls on Saturdays often. So I think by mentioning to start, it's almost a full-time job, is that you're always thinking about it. And you take your day job and you say, how could I help with ISPE in what I'm doing? Or how can ISPE help me in what I'm doing? So I would probably say maybe 30% of my week is devoted to ISPE as a chair. And I honestly wish I had more time to spend as a chair.
Okay, so our next question is for Tom. So Tom, big question for everyone. Is the annual meeting still taking place in Philadelphia?
Okay, this is a really good question. Let's just back up a moment, and I just want to talk about the conference slate this year, and then I'll get to the answer to this. So for those of you that aren't aware of it, 8 of the 9 conferences that were planned by ISPE in 2020 were flipped to virtual, including the Philadelphia annual meeting. So these face-to-face meetings were flipped to virtual. That's a tremendous amount of work. We recognize that it still needs to be a very positive experience. That said, we've evolved our virtual platform and this annual meeting platform, and the other conferences remaining will be major ISP events that you won't want to miss. Having the role that I have as CEO, I get to see the content being developed through the course of the preparation for a particular conference. And I can tell you with certainty, having lived in the pharmaceutical industry and looking at other organizational content that you see on the internet, the content that ISPE is providing is nothing short of spectacular. It's very relevant. And yes, for the annual meeting, we will still convene the ISPE business portion of the meeting and the passing of the gavel from Fran Zipp, our current chair, to Joanne Barrick, the incoming chair. So this is going to be a very real experience. I would encourage you all to attend this meeting. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to show the latest that we have evolved in terms of the virtual experience, and it'll still feel very real as if you were at the conference. So what remains yet this year for conferences? If you just look forward in a couple of weeks, we have our European conference. This was the annual meeting that was pushed back as a consequence of COVID. We then have an APAC, Asia Pacific Pharma Manufacturing Conference. I don't know how many people have had the opportunity to go to the website and look at the content for that Asia Pacific Pharma Conference and take a look at the attendees, the number of regulators, the very senior people in the industry, the very relevant topics that everybody wrestles with in this industry with respect to quality and investigations and what have you. This is really critical content for anybody working in the pharmaceutical industry, particularly with the manufacturing hat on. Our biotechnology conference is going to take place in the 7th and 8th of October. This was the European Biotech Conference, again, virtual. And again, the annual meeting will take place from November 2nd through the 6th, and it will be a big splash. I would really hope that most people in ISPE will sign up for this conference. The content is spectacular. The experience is going to be great, and I wouldn't miss it if I were sitting in my chair at GSK. And then we'll finish the year with our Pharma 4.0 conference, a tremendous amount of attention on automation and how we're putting big data concepts into the pharmaceutical manufacturing space. So that would just round out the conferences for the year. But in short, the annual meeting is not taking place at a site in Philadelphia. It will be a virtual meeting, but it will feel like a real experience as if you were at a face-to-face meeting in Philadelphia. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. And something I forgot to mention in my part is that the Voya event will be free for members on that Tuesday. So if you are interested in coming to that conference, definitely come to that session and the banquet. So we'll include information about that too. So I got to put that last plug in for Voya.
Yeah, I'd like to add something about the
Sure.
Asia Pac conference. Is that I'm the co-chair of the Asia Pac conference with a senior official from FDA who's in charge of international inspections, not the actual inspectors, but the decisions on those. So a very senior member of FDA and I are the co-chairs. And we designed this program with the help or the leadership really from the staff, from Wanda specifically, to make sure that we covered, as Tom said, topics that were relevant across the world. So while the conference was supposed to be in India, it is virtual, and the time of the conference for all of the sessions, we tried to set it up so that the most number of people could attend across the globe. So there might be sessions if you're sitting in Europe or you're sitting in the US or other parts of Asia or Latin America, South America, Australia, where you want to call in. And I really do encourage it to call in. There's a session on cybersecurity. There's sessions on changes in supply chain and plant changes in order to cope with the pandemic and the other topics that Tom mentioned. So maybe because I'm the co-chair, I get to put a plug in during this call, but it's not just for the Asia Pac region.
Thanks, Fran. So Tom, another question for you related to conferences is, will they be virtual in 21?
Great question. And this is something that we wrestle with as the pandemic unfolds and our new realities set in. For 2021, our conferences in the first half of the year will be virtual. We made that decision early so we could provide the very best virtual experience that we possibly could. Beyond that, and with a view to getting things back to what will be a new normal, and we all don't really know, none of us really know what that new normal will be. The conferences in the second half of 2021 are currently being planned as face-to-face, and we see real value in the face-to-face offering. But that's where we are today, and as this unfolds, there'll be updates put on our website as for those that are interested in understanding more and when these virtual conferences or face-to-face conferences will take place.
Thanks, Tom. And I think this next question is for me. So we've asked, how do you become a member of a community of practice? So you can actually, as part of your membership, join as many COPs as you'd like or as few as you'd like. So you can see this is list. I think I have all of like the public communities listed. If I've missed any, I apologize. But you would just go to your ISPE profile. So where you would update your address, your company, your top, your job title, there's a box that says interests and communities. You go to that box and you just check all of the ones that you want to be a part of. It does take maybe like a half an hour to sync the record with our platform, but that's how you get involved. So it's really simple. You can go in at any time and take away or add additional communities. Okay, next question is this is for Tom or Fran, or both. What recommendations do you have for recent graduates or young professionals to get involved with ISPE?
Fran, do you want to take that and I'll follow up?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. Thank you, Tom. So firstly, I think that you should join a community of practice. The previous slide that was up that listed many of the communities of practice, it's where you get to learn in the special interest groups, the community of practice. Even if you think you're not able to contribute, I assure you, you can contribute. Many of you, Tom mentioned this, and it was the same for me. The first time I became involved with ISPE was because I was in a manufacturing organization and my background had been small molecule solids, liquids, and creams, and I was asked to move to a parental site within my company. And I turned to ISPE for guidance, and I was young, much younger, and I joined a group. I networked with people, and honestly, although networking remotely brings different challenges, it also brings the opportunities we both mentioned earlier. You exchange a lot via email, via webinars. So my best recommendation is to just put yourself out there. Additionally, and I will have to get a plug in for Women in Pharma, reach out with whether you are it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, reach out. There's mentor programs within Women in Pharma. And the Women in Pharma group is happy to match people up together. And I know there's other groups that also have mentorship opportunities, and we welcome that, because you don't stay in ISPE for so many years and spend all this time if you're not committed to the members. That's the bottom line. You take your Saturdays, your weekends, your nights, because you're committed to the membership and to our mission.
Let me add to that if I can. What is interesting about this question is it really relates to recent graduates or whatever the case may be. Whenever I made a transition from the chemical industry, and yeah, there was an element of GMPs that I had to deal with in that space as well. But when I made the transition into GSK in the biotech world, to be very honest and frank, I did attend an ISPE event, and engineers by definition are basically introverted, right? And most technical people, if you were to do a survey, you'd find that a lot of them are very introverted. And so it takes a bit of courage. It takes a bit of courage to attend a meeting, not know a lot of participants, but have the courage to ask questions and begin to network. And I think what you'll find is you're not the only one in that situation. That's what I found. I was welcomed into the family of ISPE through the local chapter. I was welcomed into the international community when I attended a few conferences. It was a big unknown for me, but you have to get someone out of your comfort zone and want to go into and learn new things about the career opportunities in the industry that you work in, and certainly advance the value, your personal value proposition to that industry. And ISPE really allowed me to do that. And so you got to get involved. I mean, the answer is in the question. You have to get involved. You have to have the courage to step forward. You have to, as Fran says, join a community of practice. The Women in Pharma program that we have in ISPE is advancing like you would not believe. There's a tremendous amount of interest, and you don't have to be a woman to be part of it. I've attended certain events, and they're really meaningful. I'm one of 12 children, and I have 8 sisters, so I'm quite comfortable around all these ladies. But I have to say that these are real opportunities to advance your career, to get to know people, to participate not only in being mentored, but being a mentee. And so, I would just offer that as follow-up to what Fran said.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry, I was muted. Your poor mother, 12 children. Wow. One last question we have for you is, with those ISPE guidance documents, which ones are going to be updated? We know those are really important to the industry. So can you give us a clue on some ones that are going to be updated soon?
Well, that's a really good question. And let me say that if we could update every ISPE document every year, that would make me really, really happy. Unfortunately, there's just simply not enough people in our communities of practice and not enough staff to make that happen. But we are certainly committed to ensuring that our documents remain relevant and that do contain the latest information that's relevant to someone that's purchasing the document or what have you. This particular year, we're looking, or what we're seeing as being updates, whether or not these will hit the street or not. We see the good practice guide on maintenance. The second edition is being updated. Controlled temperature chamber mapping. This is a validation function. That's also a good practice guide that's being updated. HVAC, which is very, very core to all of our manufacturing facilities and will continue to be. Its second edition is being updated. We are considering and thinking through potential updates to GAMP. And you just have to watch this space, because that team really stays close to what's happening in the industry and evolves that document as appropriate moving forward. The good practice guide on packaging, labeling, and warehousing. I don't know how many people are aware of all of the problems that happen in that space, getting labels right, getting the right language, the right configuration, how they're packed, because there's stability issues to deal with whenever you're thinking about the packing configuration and the shipping and the shear and so on and so forth that goes along with that. So this is a really important guide. And then good engineering practice is also being updated at the moment. So those are the high level documents. Certainly the communities of practice and the knowledge network councils look to across the slate of all of the documents along with staff to try to understand what is the priority for updating those documents. And I'd also say that one of the things that we have focused on, and what I mentioned earlier, is making sure that we continue to develop documents that disseminate relevant knowledge to current activities in the industry, and we're very committed to doing that, and we believe that is the true ISPE brand. It wasn't I necessarily that referred to the ISPE guidance documents and knowledge documents as the gold standard in the industry. This is well documented, and it's testimonials from many people in the industry that recognize that as being the case for ISPE.
Yeah, you know, Tom, I want to add to that. And for those of you who know me, you know that other than manufacturing development, I spent most of my career in a quality and compliance role, in senior roles in quality compliance regulatory. And we relied on the ISPE documents. Bottom line, that's what we relied on. And when we prepared for inspections, when we prepared for setting up facilities, setting up laboratories, we went to the ISPE guides, and we felt very comfortable speaking to regulators around the world referencing these documents. So it's a testament to all who have worked on them.
Thank you, Fran. You know, and I think we just have time for one last question that I think I might be able to answer. You know, we've had a couple of questions asking how volunteers get involved beyond just joining a committee. I'm sorry, this community of practice. You know, how you get involved in committees. You know, we have a lot of committees that are in need of volunteers, just depending on what your subject area is. So if you have an interest in getting involved in a committee, send us some information. Send it to, I think it's ask@ispe.org, and we'll review some of those volunteer requests and see if we have a place for you. So usually what we do is reach back out to you and ask us, okay, well, what's kind of your experience, and how would you like to contribute? So definitely send us you know, your request, and we'll review those. Also, if you're interested in getting involved in the Women in Pharma, so you can do that as well. So I know that there's a big push for lots of different types of content that they're producing, and we definitely need volunteers to help with that. So Fran, did you want to add anything about that?
No, well, I'll mention two items,
Okay.
and maybe it didn't come in through this, through these questions, but I know that I've received this in my ISPE role from many members over the last few months. And I think it's worth noting. And so since we have so many people on the call, I'll use this opportunity. Tom mentioned at the beginning comments on our, to make sure that you vote, that voting is open for the board of directors. And honestly, please take the time. It doesn't take long to vote. It's so important. We want to hear from you. But I did want to mention that this year, every year we've been trying. We have a nominating committee for the officers. We have a nomination committee for the board. It's very well documented. We have governance documents. And the last couple of years, we've really been trying to be sure we have broad representation on our board. And I think this year, what we've done has been really good. We've made progress over the years. I think this year has been one of the best, in my humble opinion. What we did is we put people in categories based on geography, based on physical location. Now, we know many of you work for global organizations, but we wanted to be sure that we didn't have just everyone from, you know, Boston and New Jersey, as an example, the East Coast of the US. And we know that we are a global organization and we need global representation. So if you've seen the ballot, you'll see that people are grouped together and you get to pick one or two, depending on the category, by geographic regions. And, you know, we separated the East Coast of the US out. We realized that, you know, lumping all of Europe together is not, you know, real, but it was based on the candidates that we had. And so we want to have that representation. And then on the ballot, there's one extra vote. And you can go back and say, well, you know, there were 4 people in this category, 3 in this category. I wish I had 2, or there are 2 people, I like them both, even though they're from the same region. So we gave that extra ballot. So please take a look. And if you have suggestions on how we can improve it for next year, let us know. We want to listen to this going forward.
Thank you, Fran. You know, it looks like we have run out of time that we had allotted for this today, but we still have a lot of questions. But like I mentioned before, we are going to be reviewing those, and we'll be following up with some additional information after this call. I'd also like to mention too that we'll be doing a drawing for a free webinar for anyone who submitted a question ahead of time, and we haven't pulled that name yet, so we'll be reaching out with who the winner for that is. So this is a webinar of your choice from our paid webinar series. So look, be on the lookout for that here coming up soon. And with that, on behalf of ISPE, I do want to thank Fran and Tom and Jesse for joining us today. And we'd like to remind you the recording will also be sent tomorrow. Now, as we've mentioned and talked about a lot during the session today, that ISPE is always here for your professional needs. So make sure that you're making the most of your membership, that you're catching up on the community, that you're reviewing some of those past webinars, PE articles, blog posts, and studying a new or classic guidance document. And those are all part of your membership. So also check out our calendar for any virtual events that might suit your interest or your budget, including the annual meeting and other webinars that we have in the queue, and some training as well. So for information, visit us at ispe.org. And then finally, too, make sure you fill out our survey at the end. Or if you have any requests and you want to send it to us directly, you can send it to ispe@ispe.org. We hope everyone is staying safe and healthy, and that we will see you next time. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.